Now, what's the next thing we're going to create? Well, we have an option. We could do the ears, we could do the eyes, we could do the feet. Why don't we do the feet first of all? Now, as we look at the feet, if we go back to our original model, actually, if we create one foot, we could actually mirror it over to the other side and then take those two front feet and mirror them to the back side of the piggy bank. So in reality, we only need to create one foot and all the other four will be created, or the pattern will be followed from that first foot. So let's do that. So for this, I'm going to go to the right face. So as you can see here, our image that we're working with was taken using a perspective shot rather than an orthographic shot. So that's why the left legs are lower than the right legs. So we have to use our power of reason here, that when we're creating, things might not always line up, but we have to reason on, well, what are we going to line up our forms with? Why are we going to do that? That takes a little bit of experience, but it also takes just a little bit of a thought process as well. Not too much. You don't have to overly think about it. Try and comprehend that our pictures or our images might not always be perfect. So let's create our box. And what I'll do here, you can create it on center or 2-point. Let's do 2-point. I'll select the bottom here and then move it up. And we're actually going to bring the box all the way up into the inside of our piggy bank. And there we have it. Now let's keep our foot there and we're going to rotate our view cube. And you can see that our foot is at the center point, or kind of at the center point of our model, where we want to move it over to the right. That's fine. Let's go OK. Again, we can double click, right click, edit form, and we can move this into position. And then we can scale it in our X direction. So we're just going to scale it until it gets approximately in the right location. And there we have it. Now I'd probably scale this up a little bit more in Z. There we have it. So now when we look at either our right view or our front view, that one leg is approximately in the right location. I'll bring it down a little bit too. So there we go. Okay. Now, at this point, we're going to slowly manipulate it so that it looks like the basic shape of our foot. Now, the first thing I notice is the shape of our feet. They're more square. And this is for 3D printing. Obviously, if we're going to print it on a 3D printer, we don't want it to have a round bottom here, because it just becomes more difficult on our 3D printer. So let's try and square this off a little bit more. Here we're going to go to Modify and select Crease. And we need to pick vertices or edges. So we can pick, well, let's pick the edges. 1, 2, 3. We'll just go around our foot here. Perfect. And as you can see, we've picked all of those edges and it kind of flattens everything out, which looks great. Let's go OK. Now, as you can see, if we hide our canvases while this leg is looking, well, there's much to be desired with this leg right here. So let's turn on just our right view. And let's start manipulating this to conform to the shape of our foot. Now, we can do all sorts of things here, but let's just start off with the vertice as well. Right click, edit form, and I'm going to move it out. So look what happens when I move that out. It kind of flares. That's great. Let's do the same thing over there. And now I'm going to take the midpoints here and I'm going to try and bring them in a little bit. Let's go like that. We'll do the same thing over there. I'll move that one in. Perfect. So now we're kind of getting a little bit more of a shape here, which I like. Now we can rotate to the front view. And I always like actually clicking the view itself rather than it being a little bit on an angle. No, just click on our face here, on our view cube face, so that it lines up perfectly. Now we can hide our right view and turn on our front, and we'll do the same thing in this direction. Great, let's do that. We can bring this edge of our foot out. We can do the same thing over here. Now, as you can see, just as a little hint, I'm not going OK every time I make an adjustment. I just select the next entity. Now here, I'd like to select this vertice, but you can see that the main body and the vertice are kind of getting in the way. The main body is getting in the way of that. So what I'd like to do is just open up the bodies in the browser and turn off body 1. Now I can get to that point easily. So let's just bring in that a little bit more. Perfect. So what do we see? What's an issue right now? Well, obviously this is looking a little bit terrible. We don't want this leg to be sticking out the front. We want it to kind of flow a little bit more. If we look at our original model, it kind of flows into the body a little bit better. So this is quite easy. We can just grab that edge, right click, edit form, and we can bring this in as well. So let's just kind of bring that in slowly. Very nice. We can adjust different directions as well. Remember, we can bring it in this direction a little bit more, this direction. And there's no right or wrong way of doing this. You just have to kind of do it yourself and adjust it slowly so that the shapes look good. So I'm going to bring that back out just a little bit and the other direction in a little bit. Perfect. And then what I'd like to do is probably taper this. Now I'm just doing this free form. Let's bring that in a little bit more. Let's bring in this edge a little bit more too. Great. Okay, so for me, that looks pretty sweet. You can see it's got some nice texture on there. It's got a little flare. I'd probably want to bring this in a little bit more too. Great. And maybe that side in just a little bit too. Okay. So now this foot looks pretty good to me. Now, I'm sure that many of you can do a ton better job, but the point is to just dive in, start manipulating those T-Spline entities and see how things work. That's great. Let's go. Okay. Now we can activate our original body. Now let's hide our canvases and we can see we've got our foot right there. Now let's start making the feet symmetrical to the other sides. So to do that, we're going to go to symmetry. And the difference here is that our main body is symmetrical from the left side to the right side. This is one body. Whereas our foot, we don't want to make our one body symmetrical. We're actually going to have a separate body over here with a point of symmetry. So what we're going to do is go to our symmetry drop down and we can see just that. If we go to mirror internal, how many bodies do you see in our little description window? We see one body. There is one face on one side of the line of symmetry that will adjust the other face on the other side of symmetry equally. Well, we don't want that. We want to go to mirror duplicate. When we look at this image here, we can see that there are two bodies with a plane that we can mirror on. So let's select that. Now it says select your T-spline body. So let's select our foot and our mirror plane. Well, this will be our YZ. And look what happens. As soon as we do that, well, then another foot is created on the right-hand side. Let's go OK. Now let's go back to mirror duplicate, and we're going to select that. And by default, because they're both mirrored, or our right foot is mirrored to our left, well, it selects both of them. So now our mirror plane, let's select our XZ, and there we go. We've got our feet on the back side of our piggy bank too. So there we go. Now, again, if we adjust one point here, it will adjust it on all of our feet. Let's just prove it to you. I'll pick that vertice. We'll go to modify and look at what we'll do. There we go. All four of them will adjust at the exact same time. Let's go cancel. So it goes back to default. So here we've got our feet. Great. Now let's go and create our ears. So I'm going to turn back on the canvas. Let's hide the front canvas here. And we're going to create this ear shape. To do that, we will pick a box as well. Two side, we'll start there and move down. We're just going to bring it down pretty far into the model and go OK. So let's position it first of all. Again, we'll go to our front face. We'll turn on our canvas image, double click, right click, edit form. And here we can move it into place. And what I'll do is I'll do that. I'll move the scalar in X. I'll move it out to approximately the same shape. And there we have it. So again, we can adjust this, all of the properties for this in order to make it the same shape as our ear. So let's do that. Let's go OK. Now, regardless if we look at the front or the right views, we can look at our ear and you can see that it's got a kind of a sharp edge, as we call it. So I'm going to turn back on the body, and the first thing I'd like to do is crease all of these front edges so that it is more sharp or it is a creased edge. So the first thing I'd like to do is crease these front edges. Now let's do that. I'm going to go to Modify and Crease, and we can hide our first body and even our feet there. And again, I'm going to crease those edges all on the front so we can start working with those edges themselves. This is great. Now let's turn back on our body here, and I'm going to start just manipulating the front so that it takes on the shape of our canvas image. So there we go. I'm going to select the vertice here and right-click Edit, and we can bring that in. And we'll do the same thing over here. We can bring that out. Great. And I'm just going to work around slowly and kind of slowly manipulate those sides so that it takes on the shape of the ear. Down here too. Perfect. So one of the problems that you see if we go OK is the shape of the ear kind of looks terrible. It starts off a little bit small and then flares out. That's okay. This is part of the process of you learning. And again, I'm not doing it perfect here, but just having fun. Let's move that up, and then we can start moving these down. And the way I'll do that is probably grab the edges rather than the vertices. There we go. And now that may not actually do the greatest job, so perhaps what I'll do is let's grab that vertice there and go back to our right view and just bring it down. And actually, we're probably going to be putting a dent in the ear there, so that's no good. What we can do is let's go back to our right view. And actually at this point, I'm going to grab these two edges. And if you want to grab more than one entity at a time, that's fine. Just hold down Control on Windows, Command on a Mac. And now we can bring that in. There we go. Let's grab that vertice there. And again, the whole point here, the principle is to slowly manipulate it so that it takes on the basic shape of our canvas. Great. Now I'm going to move that vertice in a little bit. And the other vertice, I will move that in a little bit too. There we go. Give it a little bit more natural shape. Move that point out. Perfect. Now let's try and do the front here too. So I'm going to grab, let's grab this edge and the opposite edge. Selected two there. And actually what we can probably do is select the bottom two as well. I'll select all four of those, and let's go back there. And there's other tools that we can use. For example, we can use this angle at some point. But for now, let's just move it in. There we go. You can see the inside of the ear is still sticking out, so we can drag that back as well. Great. Let's bring that in a little bit more. Perfect. Let's go back to our front face. And I don't like the way that these flare out the sides of his ear here. So let's do that. I'm going to move that part in, this part in as well. Excellent. And then this section as well. I don't like that sticking out. Okay. All right. So you can see that we're slowly getting a better and better shape. Now this is where we refine it. We can turn off our body, turn off the canvases here, and I'd like to make this shape look a ton better. So let's just do that. I'll do it quick on the screen here. All right, so we're getting into a much better shape right here. I like the way that that flows a little bit more. These faces are not too perfect or anything, but that's okay. We can, this is part of the fun of making it perfect. If you want, you can spend a lot of time with it. But again, this tutorial is not going to go into depths with that. We just want to kind of make the basic shape here. And if it looks good to you, well, I'm sure it's great. So there we go. Can adjust this again here. Move that in. Now, I really like this shape. Let's go to our right. We can turn back on our canvases. And I think I'm happy with the overall shape of the ear. Now, one thing that we might be tempted to do is to look at the shape of our ear here and think, okay, well, I need to pull the T-spline into the center of the ear in order to hollow it out. Now, throughout your process of learning form and T-Spline modeling, you're going to learn all the different tools in Modify, which there are a ton of different tools. And in learning, you will be able to use those different tools in so many different ways. You'll get used to each one at the right time. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're not even going to use those tools right now. We're going to hide our canvas and look what we can do. Right now, it's a solid form. We're going to select these 4 faces. Again, hold down Command on a Mac or Control on a computer, and then press the Delete key, and look what happens. There we go. So now we've got a hollowed out body that we can do many things with. The easiest way to add some volume to it with those creased front edges is to go to Modify, and then we're going to select Thicken. T-Spline body, and we're just going to add some thickness to it. There we go, maybe 0.2 to start. Let's go OK. Great. Now that's a little bit too much if you ask me, so I'm going to undo. Let's go Modify, Thicken, select that body again, and I'll call it minus 0.15. Much better. Let's turn on our original body, and now look what we've got. We've got this beautiful ear ready to be mirrored to the other side. Now, the reason why we don't mirror it to the other side originally is because it just adds more complication to the body, to our view, for our eyes in order to make good decisions about what to do next. So try and just do your one feature first, and then when you're happy with it, you can simply mirror it to the other side. So let's do that now. Okay, perfect. Our piggy bank is well underway. So you can see a couple things here. When we thickened it, the ears actually kind of bulged out from the underside. So I'm just going to adjust that real quick. We can grab that vertice, modify, and I'm just going to pull it in. Great. And we can do that with the others as well. I'm going to select 2 at one time there. Just bring it in. And I kind of like the way that it adjusts its appearance or its shape along the way there. But we can just grab those other 2 vertices here and move it in as well. Perfect. So I like that shape a lot more. Let's go OK. So now what do we have? We've got our legs, we've got our ears. This is great. Let's move on to the snout. So we're going to turn back on our front canvas, and we can do the exact same thing. Let's go to our box, and instead of 2 point, we'll select the center, and there we go. I'll do that. Now our body is completely hidden here. So we're going to go OK. Turn off our body 1. And at this time, I'll probably hide my feet and the ears and just work with the nose itself. Double click the nose, right click, edit form, and we can move this into place. So let's move that out first of all. Now we can make our main body visible again. Great, and let's just put this in approximately the right location that we'd like. There we go. We can turn on our other canvas. So it's a little bit big. I can shrink it down. Great, and I'm just looking at the height right now. Perfect. We can scale it up just a little bit more. Let's go OK. So here we would like the right side to be the exact same as the left side. Now we could have put symmetry on originally when we created our box, but because I forgot to do that, well, we're just going to do it right now. So we can go back to symmetry and mirror internal. Select face. This is really cool with Fusion. We can just select one face and say we'd like it the exact same as the other. So face 1 is the same as face 2. And now we have a line of symmetry that's drawn down the center of our part. So now everything we do on this side will be reflected on the other side. Now we're just going to do the exact same thing with our canvas. And I won't speak here. I'm just going to get designing. Once I've got that basic shape, again, we can go back to our crease. Okay. And now we're going to use this. Obviously, I've done a poor job at the bottom here, but that's okay. This is part of the fun of design work. Okay, I'm quite happy with that there. And you can see that I inset the inside vertice a little bit, so it just gives it a little bit more shape. And again, if we don't like the position of it, we can just double click our model. We can move it up if we want, we can move it down, but I kind of like it right there. Great. So now what we're going to do is think outside the box a little bit, and to create the nostrils, they're just going to have a little bit of an indent to them. So for this, we don't have to create the individual indents. We can just create another quad ball. Let's create it on our YZ plane, and I'm just going to create it off here. And let's do approximately the size of our nostrils that we'd like, 0.4. That looks pretty good. We can exclude or take off symmetry here. Let's go OK. And now I'm going to position this in approximately the location that the nostril is supposed to be. So let's go modify, and we can drag this into the right spot so we can look at our canvases as well. There we go. I'm going to try and put it kind of a little bit below the center point. Perfect. We'll go to the right side as well, and we can bring this in just like that. And I'll try my best to keep, we don't want to plunge the nostril too deep into it, because we're actually going to remove this material from the nose in due time. So there we go. And I am just going to mirror it to the other side. So let's go symmetry, duplicate, and we're going to grab that, and our mirror plane again is going to be a YZ. Now this is just another hint. I've talked about it in other tutorials, but in order to select this other plane, sometimes it's a little challenging to get the right feature that we're trying to select. So here, I'm just going to hold down the left mouse button until a selection menu shows up, and I can actually pick either plane there. So let's select YZ, and it puts the nostril on the other side. So remember, we are going to take these two bodies that we've created, and we are going to remove the material from the snout. Let's do the same thing with the eyes. It's the same principle here, but the eyes obviously we're not going to remove later on. We're going to keep that material protruding from the body. So let's create a quad ball. We'll select our YZ plane. We'll just create that. Great, okay. And we can double click, edit form, and move this into approximately the right location. There, we'll go to the right face. We'll bring this in as well. Okay, so that looks about right. I wonder if it's actually connecting to the body. No, it's not actually connecting to the body. All right, that's okay. So we can go back to the front. That looks to be the right location there. And all we have to do is move it now towards the part. And as we do, you can see that the part kind of envelops it a little bit. And that means that it's actually going to be connected to the body later on. And I might just move this towards the inside just a little bit too. There we go. Now we can adjust this later on if need be. Let's just go OK for now. And we'll make it symmetrical on both sides. So symmetry, duplicate, and our mirror plane is right there. Perfect. Okay, so let's hide our canvases. And here is the basic shape of our piggy bank. Now, looking at his eyes, they're really kind of bulging out there. So let's adjust it. I'm going to double click, right click, edit form, and move it just a little bit more into our body, main body. There we go. And because we have symmetry on, as we adjust one, the other side moves correspondingly. Very good. Check out our next tutorial in this series to learn the next steps in your quest of learning form modeling. See you then.